Based on the
It's
fact
just
that
you
we're semi
ranting
vertebrates,
like a lunatic about something that nobody has mentioned.
Well, can I
I know
say
a few
something?
Chinese people. He's right though. They only date with him.
Well, listen.
But if
The
you're
re-
making that decision based on somebody's race and nothing else, then how is that not racism?
This is the thing, Kim. Can I just say this? The
Go
reason
ahead.
that I consider myself a racist at all is if I was a black mother, I would feel no different about my black son. If I was a Chinese mother, I would feel no different about my
I don't know
son.
that. You have no idea whether that's true or not. How could you know that?
Because I'm not a racist. I mean, if I was a different
I'm
color,
not saying you're a racist, but I think that because I don't think that this defines you as a person, but I think that position, I can't see how you can argue that if you're making this decision purely based on somebody's race, that isn't racism.
Well,
It's
like
not.
inbreds. It's like inbreds, you know.
Yeah.
You shouldn't want to go date
No,
an
David.
inbred either.
Bad David. Get the squirt
I
bottle.
don't think it means you're a racist, but I think that position is a racist one.
It's not. It's not because
It's a cultural.
Where you draw the line. Where you draw the line is if it affects the workplace, if it affects the healthcare system. If you say they're not a human being or less valuable than you, that's where you draw the line for racism. If you say I don't want to date a black person, that's not racism.
I think you're talking about what you're
That's
talking about.
preference.
What you're talking about is discrimination, racial discrimination.
Listen, the Chinese don't date outside because of
Can I
culture.
just finish the sentence? But that doesn't. I don't think that defines what racism is. I think there's racism, and I think there's racial discrimination.
Yeah.
The way I've been working the problem is that if you're a man, you need a woman, and if you're a woman, you need a man. And in those terms, it looks like being a woman has it easier because the egg is much more complex than the sperm.
For Gabriella and Southern Belle, do not mention in here again.
What does that have to do with the topic?
Repeating to these guys that you're not racist. Fuck these guys. Let them think what they want to think.
Oh, I don't
Sitting
care
here
what
trying to beg their acceptance that you're not racist. Fuck
No,
these guys.
I do not care
Sorry,
what they think.
Don't
If
have
they
to-
want,
Nobody has to beg anybody's acceptance. You can just explain it.
No, I
They can
don't
think.
care.
They can think what they think. No one's telling them what to think, are they?
They've already
Right.
explained it. They've
So-
already said in the past 30 minutes they're not racist at least 30 times. What
Right,
you
but
want is
Fine.
please convince you. Please
No.
untwist my distorted,
Let
divided
me give
mind.
an
and-
opinion
It's
here.
divided. If somebody says this person is good enough and this person isn't good enough because of their race, explain to me, give me reasoning how that is not racism. Please.
She didn't say they
Because it's
weren't
a
good enough.
cultural thing. It's a
This
cultural.
person is good enough because they're white. This person because they're black. Only because they're black. That's the only reason they're not good enough.
That's
Tell
not what
me-
she's saying.
Tell me how that is not racism.
She's
please.
not saying that though. She's
that's
saying
not
She's
what
saying
I'm
that.
saying at all.
no.
It's
She's
called-
saying she's.
You are
Listen,
saying exactly that.
it's not just about the color of
This
the skin.
person
It's-
can marry my child because they're
Let us
white.
respond, you
This
fucking
person-
moron.
this
Let us
person be-
respond.
This person, because they're black, can't marry my child. They're not
Right,
good
but
enough.
that's not because he's black. It's because when you're black, your ethnicity is different. The way you were raised is different than a Christian white family. Everything's different. That's why.
Oh, for love of God.
It's called a preference. It's called
It's true.
It's called
What
the
do you know,
mother.
love of God?
It's called the mother or the father knows the tenant. Nowadays, it's not so much, but the mother and father knows. For example, if you're Chinese, they'll say, and I don't agree with this, but I only want you to talk to Chinese people. Why?
And that's
Perhaps
wrong.
the mother feels
that's
more.
wrong.
There's
Greg.
racism isn't involved. I know your ego requires it.
Racism.
Racism is not involved.
It's not
It's a
racism.
preference.
It's
It's a
all
preference.
racism.
Okay, what are the other factors that are affecting the decision-making process that are not race in this example?
Culture.
Well, let me
They
ask
said
you a
it.
question. What if
But
your
you
child
aren't
started-
assessing. How do you assess a person's culture? What she's
Anybody-
doing, what she's doing is looking at the color of their skin and saying, on the basis of that, their culture will be this. That's racism.
That's true though.
Our
No.
cultures are different, Jim. They're
Again,
very different.
they strawman everything. They pick a
Like,
specific narrow niche of a
They get
circle.
definitions
and
out of it.
It
They
is
get
what it is.
definitions out
It
of
is
a
what it is.
Let me
dictionary.
ask
Cry
Jim a
about it.
question.
can we
Let me ask
can
Jim a
we
question.
answer?
Go on then.
Jim,
It,
are different races also different culturally? Oftentimes.
She's
Oftentimes they're
Irish.
not.
Y-
Oftentimes they're not.
She's Irish. There's 60 million Irish
Hey,
in
I
the United
shut the
States
fuck
of
up.
America. They've
I asked
always
Jim a
been treated
question.
as second-class citizens. So quit acting like the Irish haven't been down as bad as anybody else. Why do you have to be? She can't be. If
Who
she said
mentioned
she
the
was
Irish?
like a
I
no,
think,
she said like
Hey,
she was
can
a
I
Hitler.
can I
all right,
Like
to
she was a
answer
white.
Chris's question that you've completely derailed, I think sometimes, yes, but I don't think that that's a judgment that you can make just on a person's appearance.
Okay,
Because I
I
think
disagree.
I think, like for instance, you could go to India and see an Indian person, and they culturally they would be completely different to a third generation Indian person in the United Kingdom.
Yep.
They would
Yeah,
have completely
can I
I don't know
very
about that.
different. There would be some similarities in their culture, but
hey,
Yeah.
there would be many differences, and there would be many more similarities with that third generation Indian person in England. They would have many more similarities with other English people than their Indian counterpart would.
Yeah.
So I
So
don't
let me
think.
respond.
So the point is, it's grey areas. I think
Okay.
there are differences, but not necessarily ones that you can judge just based on appearance.
Right.
You
Now
also
let me just
sometimes
respond to
have
that.
children that were adopted into white families, and they are
Chris's turn.
behaving
Okay.
just like them.
You can't justify
He's-
your prime
Let him
minister, Jeb.
respond, guys.
So my response actually is I don't disagree with you wholeheartedly. I agree with the sentiment. But at the same time, the opposite end of that is oftentimes these quote unquote stereotypes based on skin color, culture, whatever, are true. I live in a town that has a massive, for the United States at least, a massive East Indian. Oh God, who's
please,
that?
Let
David.
him finish. God.
Zant?
It was an
I think-
accident, bro. Someone's hot mic and continue.
think
I
it
live
was
in a
David.
town that has a massive Indian population. My kids who are white have lots of Indian friends. They're friends with these Indian people, and there's no problem with that. However, our cultures are so different. Our religions are drastically different. The way they treat women is drastically different. I work with a lot of Indian people, and I've heard stories of the way that they treat women. It's honestly abhorrent. And these Indian people, they all, just like keep saying the Chinese, the Indian populations all marry within the same race, if you want to call it that, same culture, if you want to call it that. So I don't think there's anything wrong. A lot of people preference is to do that, and that's just how the way of the world is.
But they're still human, right?
But I don't.
I think
Yeah.
I think if you're making the decision based on a person's race, which is what you're doing when you look at them and decide, well, their skin's the wrong color, then I think that's racism. Okay, you may, part of your reasoning may be because their skin's this color, then their culture is X, but it's still racism. I just can't see how it's not.
Jim,
Yeah.
I want to clear this up. We have never, nor have we ever thought it or said it or spoke it. We do not think anything to the what you said about being better than.
But if
Nobody is better than
but
anybody
they are.
else.
But they are if you're saying this person, I would accept this person to marry my daughter or son, this hypothetical person, and then this other hypothetical person that has no different characteristics from the first hypothetical person, apart from the color of their skin.
Because
That's
of
not
cultural
acceptable
differences,
to me.
man.
But Jim,
It's because of
is
religion and
racism.
culture.
and
It's
and
because
where
of religion
you
and culture.
Would have been
and,
great
and
if
where
they could
you
have finished, Kikuchi. But go ahead.
Kikuchi can't let you finish.
that's never been an issue. We've not had to teach our children anything.
You have literally stated that you've taught your
Right.
children to know better.
No, I mean
I
it,
know,
it's
it's
just an
ridiculous.
example
We
But it
of,
wasn't
never said
about
that
it.
we
It
taught
wasn't
them. We just said they knew better. It was not something we said, don't you ever do that. They just
No, but
knew. They grew up they grew up around us. They grew up around other white kids. They've
Right.
grown up in society. You don't have to sit a kid down. They know.
Right,
It
but,
depends on.
but I'm not talking about what you teach your children. This was about what your reaction was, or what Gabriella's reaction was when, the hypothetical was put to her. She said, I wouldn't accept it.
But
Well,
you have to, but you have
but
to
my
also
son would never do that because he knows better.
you have to
Right, well, now you're
understand
not
that
accepting the hypothetical, so that's
you have to
kind of
understand
Well,
that these
but I
women are from
wouldn't.
the
I
South.
wouldn't. He
They're
knows
from the
that I
South.
wouldn't.
They're born and raised like that. They're from the South.
Yeah, he
Their
knows
parents
that.
and grandparents taught them black people are slaves.
You don't even
So-
have to mention that. You don't
No.
ever have to speak that out of your mouth. That is never a conversation. Kids just know. They know.
Yeah, it's their culture. They're
Right.
from the South.
Right, but that's racism.
It is what it is. You're
Yeah,
gonna
you
think
call
that
it racism,
either
I
way.
call
You're
it
gonna think that
tomato.
either way. Isn't that right?
No,
You are compelled.
Glory, stop. I've given my reasoning for why I think that. If you have reasoning for why I'm wrong, just give me the reasoning. Don't tell me how shit I am and how I'm biased and I only think one thing. Give me the reasoning, if you have some. But you don't have any. That's the problem.
He's literally going by
There
the.
is such a thing as preference, okay? There is such a
Yes.
thing as preference, and for
Yeah, we
one
get
to have
that.
a preference does not need to
We
put them in the
understand.
category of a bigot or a racist. You're ignoring that.
Categorically, this
You're
is not
ignoring.
preference.
Okay, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet.
No, who
It
gives a
is
shit whether you're dumb?
preference.
And a
Who gives a shit
racist.
whether you're dumb?
Hey, why don't you fucking moderate your server,
Just
Gen
let him
Panda?
finish,
Instead of
guys, please.
I mean,
Jem
I
is-
didn't have to teach my son not to do drugs. He knew better. I didn't. I didn't have to teach my son not to steal from other people. He knew better.
We're not
Did you-
talking about what you taught your children.
That's what I'm saying, though. I mean, that's our
I'm
preference.
talking about what your reaction was when the hypothetical was put to you. And
It would
you
not
said-
be acceptable. He knows
and-
that up front.
and
It's
you
not
said
going to
you-
happen.
You said
I
you
find it
would-
weird that you're putting dating a person of a
You
different
go ahead,
color in
Dan.
the same category as stealing and committing crimes.
I'm giving an example that y'all said
I was
we
in the
sacrifice
middle of a
our
sentence.
children to
Zach,
be.
you're a moron. You just
You
caused
know,
it.
Zant interrupted him.
Well, Zach
We've not
interrupted
taught
Jen.
our
the first
children
thing.
anything
down,
about
boys.
racist
Down,
Listen,
girl.
or
listen.
racism.
You could bring a Chinese, a fucking Jewish person, some fucking Arab. Pick every country, pick anybody, and they would say, "Yeah, I have a preference to date within my race, not only for myself but for my children as well. It's a preference." Why? Oh, we don't have to point out any of the deficiencies within anybody. It's just a particular proficiencies of what we're used to. Like, for example, a family may only have a breed of German Shepherds, right? And they'll just like have this thing where that's just what their family is. It's that breed. They only have German Shepherds. They love all other dogs, but their preference, their thing is German Shepherds. You understand? So you'll have a Jewish or you'll have a Chinese.
Listen,
Their
we're not
preference,
talking
their thing.
Glory, we understand the difference between someone saying I have a preference and someone saying if my son chose that dog, I have a preference that he chose an Alsatian, but if he chooses a Pekingese, I'm not bothered. And someone saying if he
so the
came over with a Pekingese, that would be unacceptable.
It is what it is. Certain families create
Yes,
rules
it
for themselves.
is.
It is
I
what it
say
is.
that every
What's
time
wrong
someone
with
says
it?
to you,
Slaves love worrying about other
If
people's
I didn't want a
families.
Pekingese, it would be unacceptable.
Yeah, what's
Goddamn
wrong
right.
with it? If I told
That's
my
not a
child,
preference,
I
is
don't
it?
want a
That's not a
Pekingese,
preference.
we're going to stick with the German Shepherd. What's wrong
Yeah.
with that?
You're damn right
There's
to
a
have a
difference-
preference
there's
for
a
blue-eyed
difference
blonde hair.
between
You damn
saying-
right to have a preference. Oh
All
well.
these people
There is a difference
saying that it's
between-
racism.
There is a difference between. I'm
Yeah.
talking. There's a
They're
difference
the
between
real
preference-
racist ones.
There is
It's
a
all
difference.
it's all
between-
inverted here. I
there is
figured
a
it out.
difference-
Right,
No,
Glory.
listen. All
There
these
is a
people.
difference. There is a difference. I'm going to say this. There is a difference
Go on.
between a preference and saying the other choice is unacceptable.
No,
It's
there's
different.
not.
Paza, do you prefer women or men?
It's not a question of prefer. And sex with a woman, sex with a man is unacceptable to me. It's not a fucking preference. I'm heterosexual,
Exactly.
you
And you
dickhead.
just proved
It
your
is a
point
fucking
wrong. You just proved it to you.
No, it's not
Yeah.
a preference.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
The way I see it is,
Yes, it
to
is.
say
I
this
don't
is true, you
prefer
have to
one over the
prove.
other.
So
One
you're a
is unacceptable
homophobic
to me
then.
in
So
that
you're a
respect.
homophobe
You
then.
have,
You hate gay
you
men,
have to
right?
prove.
Whoa.
You have to prove that these two people have different brain cells. That they're somehow less adequate or
Fuck
something.
up.
Let me ask. If what gets me is if y'all didn't have a problem with it, you wouldn't label people that had a difference of opinion. Why is it that all this stuff has a name or is protected? If it's so right and it's so, should be okay, why is it always the people that are engaging in these things calling out the people that don't?
Because we've had wars over just little silly things like this. And you come in here
Honest to
saying
God, why should it all be
because
protected if it's so right?
someone's colored a bit differently, but you can't prove that they think the same, that somehow you have the moral high ground or the advantage. It's a big joke.
Why the fuck did we put up with you, Connor? You're not actually engaged in the conversation. You're saying some words that
Hey,
could be
more than
construed as
you,
part
more
of
than
it,
you,
but it's
more than
He's
you,
engaged
to
more
have
than you, is
listened to
right.
more than you.
I'd rather listen to him than you.